Allie?
All right, well, the son-in-law of Osama bin Laden pleading not guilty in a New York City courtroom Friday, just 1 mile from Ground Zero, leaving many concerned about security. Here's New York City's Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
We went through this before where the federal government wanted to try somebody here and then decided eventually to move them, I think, to Guantanamo. Look, it's the federal government's choice. If they ask help from New York City, particularly the PD, we will give them whatever they need.
Security issue?
No. If you are in a federal court here in New York, you go from the holding pen to the courtroom underground. I mean, you'll have a lot more.
Suleiman Abu Ghraib's trial will mark one of the first prosecutions of senior al-Qaeda leaders on U.S. soil, and many 9/11 families are opposed to this decision. Joe Connor, who lost his cousin in the World Trade Center on 9/11, joins us now with his thoughts. Joe, good morning to you.
Thanks, Clayton.
When you heard that he was going to be tried here in the United States and just a few blocks from where the trade center went down, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was very happy that we caught him, first of all, so congratulations to our for our security people. But I was appalled by the idea that he would be tried in a U.S. civilian court, especially so close to Ground Zero.
What did you think of what Mike Bloomberg there said about security is not an issue?
Well, it was an issue when KSM was first going to be brought here for trial, so why is it an issue now? I heard another quote that Bloomberg had said, and he said he didn't want to discuss it because it might make the president's job that much more difficult. And my feeling is, it's not about the president, this is not about Mike Bloomberg, this is about the people, this is about the security of the American people and the people of New York City. When those people went to their jobs on 9/11, they didn't have the security, they were killed. And I want to hear that the politicians now aren't there to protect each other. They're there to protect us.
Beyond security, at issue, of course, and the controversy stands whether or not he should be tried in a military tribunal at Guantanamo Bay, as some have suggested, or here in civilian court. Could we get more information out of him were he to be in a military tribunal? Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I think you can. And I think that any time that we bring someone to civilian court, they are subject to our laws. They've already been Mirandized. So he has 4 lawyers, from what I understand. So how much information are we getting from him now? And how much information we get from him in the future? He also will be able to put Americans on the stand and have our people testify and maybe forced to disclose some of our secrets that we don't want to disclose. It's a very dangerous precedent. And now we see KSM, who is going to be brought to Gitmo, tried in Gitmo, now he might, as Andy McCarthy said the other day, he might be able to use that to get his trial moved back to the civilian courts as a precedent.
And Joe, obviously you feel strongly about this. This is personal to you. Can you tell us about 9/11 and what happened with your family?
Sure. I commuted through the trade zone on 9/11 with my brothers. We did every day. And I was in my office. I worked at 60 Wall Street and really felt the explosions and turned and saw the sides of the buildings, first building blow. And I called my cousin, who worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. His name was Steve Schlag. And couldn't get him. I called his cell phone, left him a message. I finally got my brother on the phone because he worked near there. And finally, when the second plane hit, I was on the phone with him, and we met on the street. And we ended up at my cousin's house that night with his family. It was horrible.
That's your cousin that we're seeing right there on the street.
Steve.
Handsome, young.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
And you mentioned thanks to the folks who managed to catch this guy.
Yeah.
When you saw this guy on those videotapes, shortly after 9/11, you saw the Osama bin Laden videotapes coming out, and Abu Ghraib is sitting right next to him on those videotapes. Yeah. And you see that this guy is going to be near Ground Zero.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. They bring him back to the site of his greatest accomplishment. I mean, that's about the worst thing you can do. This justifies everything he did. Now you see Eric Holder, who released the terrorists that killed my father when I was a kid.
We should just mention that, just as an aside, your father was killed by terrorists in 1975.
Yes.
Obviously not Al-Qaeda, but another horrible situation. Can you just briefly tell us what happened?
Yeah, he was killed at Francis Tavern on January 24th, 75. I was 9 years old, and my cousin Steve was his godson. So we went through this already, and in 1999, the Clintons and Eric Holder, when he was Deputy Attorney General, released the terrorists that claimed my father's murder. And now you have Eric Holder very piously talking about how we're going to bring these terrorists to justice and we'll never stop. And my feeling is that for politics, anything can happen with these guys. He's not being charged with murder. He's being charged with conspiracy, similar to what the FALN was charged for and killed my dad. And they changed the story, saying, well, these guys are never charged with murder. They shouldn't be in prison for the rest of their lives. I think it's a dangerous precedent. I think there's possibility that in the future these guys could be released. And I want the American people to be first and foremost on our politicians' minds and not some political agenda.
Joe Connor, thanks so much for sharing your personal story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
We appreciate it.
Coming up here on the show, sex education for kindergarten. It's about to be reality.